and welcome to your beautiful now.
Hello everyone, Derek Floyd here, Beautiful Now Podcast. Welcome to another edition of Beautiful Now Live. Now this is the segment where I interview special guests who talk about and introduce topical relevant things that matter to you and your world and your family. But we want to leave you in a way where it's uplifting, encouraging, hopefully inspiring, and starting conversations between you, your family, and your friends to move forward on things that matter. And today we're going to actually introduce a topic which is something dear to my heart, and that is music programs or music education in our school system today. As most of us know, the budgets in our school systems have been shrinking more and more every year, taking away some of the great things that gave our children something to look forward to every day. And some things that help them become better students, better citizens, better individuals, more well-rounded. And music programs is one of those things. Do you remember when you were a kid, when you went to school and you got to be in the band? How important that was when you were 7, 8, 9 years old? Well, now these programs are being taken away because of budget cuts, and we have to figure out a way to keep them. Now, my special guest today happened to have seen this actual program or lack of music programs in schools firsthand because he was an elementary school teacher, and he saw his music programs fading away in his own school and decided to do something about it. He actually started guitar lessons for kids after school, a small program and a small handful of kids, on his own time now, without anyone charging, no one giving him money for. He did it on his own. But as he started to do this, the kids took to it, and now he has founded, and he's the CEO of one of the largest non-for-profit organizations that services over 1 million kids with free instrument and vocal music programs called Little Kids Rock. I want him to tell his story about how he's made a difference in the music programs for schools today. Will you help me welcome my friend, David Wish? Dave, are you there, Dave?
I am, Derek. Nice to hear from you.
Hey, how are you, my friend? You good over there?
I am well. I'm safe at home, working remotely, and grateful to be able to still bring music to kids even from the distance of my music room.
And can you imagine who knew COVID was going to be here? Wow, like washing hands and all that. How did that change your world, right?
Yeah, and anyways, it's changed, of course, everyone's world, but in my world, music education, I know that like 96% of the teachers that we work with are serving their kids either entirely remotely or at least partially. So it's a really interesting time, disruptive, but also super innovative.
Wow. And for someone like yourself, I'm sure you're creative in trying to figure out ways to get the instruments and the programs to the students at all costs. So that's great that you're involved at this point. We need you at this stage of the game.
Well, musicians aren't in the creative industries for nothing. If we can't be the creative problem solvers, or at least some of them that the world needs, the world's in some trouble. Actually, a little funny story that the term movers and shakers, you think of Wall Street, you think of business people, but the term actually came from a poem that was written, and it was referring to music makers. And in fact, the opening line to the poem says, "We are the music makers, we are the dreamers of dreams." And it ends with, "But we are the movers and the shakers of the world forever it seems," just talking about the power of music and the arts to change people's minds, open people's hearts, bring people together. So it feels we in the music industry have a special role to help our society and our world through these disruptions.
Wow. And what's so funny is that I love that little clip of "We are the music makers, we're the dreamers of the dreams," because my favorite movie of all time, all my family and kids know this, is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And he makes that small statement, and that's where he's and I'm always like, that's great. So that's so funny that you said that, and it just reminds me again that music is so important, and that's the reason we're here today, is to talk about why music programs need to be in school, how we can keep that going, and put a conversation on the table about it. So let's kind of dig in a little bit. Being a teacher and a musician yourself, what was your first exposure to the power of music?
Well, when I was a little boy, I mean, so I guess some of my earliest memories are being with my father and his record collection, which felt like one of the central treasures of the household. I'm a little more mature, and of course, my father, who is still with us, I'm grateful to say, is even a
Oh,
little
wow.
more mature. So his record collection came in the form of something called 45s that some of your listeners may not know what those are. They were little itty bitty records, yeah, with two songs, one
Vinyl.
on each side. And I just remember him putting those records on and hearing people like Little Richard and Big Mama Thornton and Carl Perkins and Elvis Presley and the Beatles. And my world was sort of uh, immersed in that. It was sort of inseparable. And I still remember what those records looked like. I still remember the smell of the musty old record books that my father would keep in them. And most of all, I remember the feelings I would get when I would hear that music. And so those are really my earliest memories of the power of music. And I remember them super fondly.
Wow, wow. That's so awesome. And for myself, I remember always hearing, like you said, vinyl. I remember getting the little needle and dropping it down and hearing this great music through the house. Music was a big thing in our house, so I couldn't imagine it not being there. And then going to school and hearing music in my day and going to my music class, it was just always part of my learning. So with that, thinking about that thought, music education now seems almost less important in school. So when you were trying to put together your idea for Little Kids Rock, how did you get them, or how did you convince them to even get this guitar class thing going? That's part of your story.
Sure. So I think that there are a lot of reasons. None of them are particularly, great ones, but there are a lot of different reasons why schools sometimes won't have music programs. In my case, it was just a question of funding. School didn't have the resources, and it was tough. But I am a musician, and I raised my hand and said, hey, look, I'm happy to volunteer my time to run a music program after school for some kids. And my principal was thrilled. She said, please, that would be wonderful. And so I began offering free guitar lessons initially to the children who were I was a first grade school teacher for 10 years. So I started offering free guitar classes just to my 6-year-olds, and I wanted them to learn the music that moved and inspired them. And that's always been my approach as a teacher, is to find the passion in another person as opposed to put it in them. Everybody loves music. So it's just a question, what music do you love? Who do you listen to? So all of my students, this was a while back, they loved Ricky Martin and Selena and the Backstreet Boys. So I started teaching them to play that music. And what I noticed really quickly was they were really transported by the experience of going from being just a listener to the music to someone actually making it. And anyone who's a musician knows that magical feeling of, oh my goodness, wait a minute, I'm doing this. This thing that I revere, this thing that moves me, this thing that is so inspiring. Well, now I'm making it. Mm-hmm. And quickly, the kids that were in my class started writing their own songs. It's teaching a person a few chords can be a pretty dangerous thing. Once you've got a few chords and you figure out, well, wait a minute, that's how they wrote that song. You start to make up your own stuff. And to me, that's one of the great things that music does for people, obviously, is puts them really in touch with their own voice, literally, figuratively, their own creativity. So once my kids started writing their own songs and playing concerts for the rest of the school, all the other kids in the school wanted to be in my after school music program. So we started creating tapes and CDs and selling those of the kids' music.
Wow.
Yeah, and we used the money that we got from selling that to, aunts and uncles and parents and friends, and
sure.
just well-wishers in the community to buy instruments for another class and then for another class. So I started offering classes every day before school, every day after school, and at the height of the zaniness, sometimes even during my lunch hour. And it got to the point where I really couldn't take on any more students because I was also teaching first grade full time, and this was something, and I loved that as well. But this was something I was also doing just out of a love for it.
Sure.
I also started to see like the impact on the school. The school culture changed, and I also knew that my school was far from being the only one that didn't have music programs. So I started, thinking about, well, what if I train some other people to do what I'm doing? I can give them the curriculum I've made up. Maybe I can even give them instruments, but then they could do it at their school or even at my school initially, because I couldn't handle all the students. So I started finding other teachers, not necessarily music teachers, because there weren't any at the time in my school or area. And I started training other teachers that knew how to play a little bit, how to teach their own kids. And through that, I realized, wow, I actually love teaching teachers to teach kids music as much as I love teaching the kids. But if I do that, it could be something much bigger than just for my one school. And so I guess it was back around 2001. A lot of local people had heard about this program, and some of them included Carlos Santana, Bonnie Raitt, and John Lee Hooker, may he rest in peace. And some of them came to visit the school. Some of them sent us instruments because they were like, what is this crazy, first graders writing songs and playing my music? Like, I like that. I want to see more of it. And I just had an early sense that this could be something bigger. So in 2002, I conceived of Little Kids Rock as a nonprofit that would help restore, expand, and innovate music education in the public schools. So in 2002, Little Kids Rock was founded. And since that time, we've been working to do just that. And we do it in a very simple way. We find school teachers, music teachers and otherwise, who want to bring more music to more kids at their schools. We train them in our approach. And I mentioned a little bit about our approach. Our approach is to teach children the music that is meaningful to them, culturally relevant and powerful for them. So sometimes if you're a traditional music teacher, you might not know how to teach a child to play R&B or how to play rock or how to rap or how to do Latin pop or pop. So that's where our training comes in. We also then give them the curriculum they need to do that. And then the cherry on top is often we give them a full class set of instruments, guitars, basses, drums, keyboards, etc. And in that way, they can bring music to the children at their schools. So over the past 18 years, we've done that for a network of over 5,000 schools and brought the transfer. Well, Rome's not built in a day. Took a little bit. But over the past 18 years, we've been able to bring music education to over 1 million school children with the help of over 5,000 music educators in over 45 states across the United States.
Wow. That's a big story. Wow. And to think it all started with you wanting to give guitar classes for free after school, right? That's how it began. So if I look back and think about that, your main goal was to just have them be able to come and see and be able to learn about music, and you were teaching them about songs that they knew and let them have the experience of music. But now you've expanded the program. Now it's grown. How has your main goal for the program changed to where it is now? What is the main vision for it now?
So I would say the goals have never changed. The tactics have. The goal is to put something of lasting value into as many children's lives as we can, right? And so we all know, especially those of us in the music world, and by that, I don't mean professional, anybody who can pick up an instrument and get joy and meaning or write a song or, program a beat or sing, whatever, anyone who's got that in their lives, you realize like, wow, this is something special. So that's always been the goal. The tactics have changed. So it began as a guitar program, but as we professionalized and grew, it was, if children are listening to rock or rap or, reggae or whatever, it's like it's drums, it's bass, it's guitars, it's singing, it's also computers and technology and apps and multi-track recording. And so what's changed is we lean into this idea that all human beings are profoundly musical, and it's our job to draw the music out, not drum it in, not decide this is what music you'll learn, this is how you should learn it. And we believe there are as many different ways of being musical as there are of being human, which is a lot. So our tactics have diversified. So as 20 years ago, it was mainly a rock-based program. Now it's much more, and that was basically because whatever, I was a rock person and the kids were listening to pop and rock, so it seemed fine. Now, whatever, rap is the number one musical genre in the United States, and kids have a big interest in it. Still rock. In fact, the top 5 genres in the country right now are in order of consumption. And this goes for people, not just children, people of all ages, races, classes, etc., are listening first to rap by a point or two, then to rock, then to pop, then to Latin, then to R&B. So, we're trying to embrace all of that and more. So if a child comes to school and they want to learn classical, we want that to happen, and there are programs that can do that. If they would like to learn jazz, great. If they want to learn some of those other musics, that's where the innovation comes in, right? That's why we say that. So if a school's lost its music program, we can restore it. If they have a music program, but maybe they only are offering choir and marching band, we can come and say, hey, we can help you create a popular music program or a modern band program in addition to it and serve even more children. And because of the fact that our program really leverages students as drivers of their own learning in terms of what canon they listen to, in terms of being music creators, not just reproducing the music of other people, but writing their own music, being improvisers. That's where the innovation comes in.
That's amazing. I can only imagine as this began to grow when you were first starting out and now to the level it is now. I'm sure there was some in between time where it was probably how did you figure out how to expand it? Because I'm sure people were like, this is great, it's popular, but now everybody wants it. How do you take it from your school to 43 states across the country?
So, one foot in front of the other. I think what we've done, success breeds success. And our teachers, when given the resources they need, which is the training, the curriculum, the instruments, and then they add themselves, their success bred the support of more and more supporters. So a successful program, say in San Francisco, California, might be interesting to people in Los Angeles, or might be interesting to people in San Diego, and people, might catch wind of that in Dallas, and so again, I think 20 years ago, if you'd asked me like, hey, this little volunteer thing you're doing, it's, do you see it being in over 550 school districts? I would say like, what? But of course, today we are, but it's been one school district at a time. Often at the beginning, sometimes even one school at a time. And at this point in our work, we tend to work with entire school districts. So, for example, in Miami, we have an initiative to try to bring our music programming to all of the public schools in the Miami-Dade public school system. And this is in addition to the music that's already going on. They have a wonderful program, but they are so taken with the notion of culturally relevant music for their kids. They have a very diverse student base, and so we partner with the district itself. Same thing in the state of Colorado and in the state of Maine. We're working with the departments of ed there to expand our music program throughout the state, offering training, curriculum, and instruments to teachers throughout the state to help reach kids that otherwise might not be reached.
That's incredible. I love that. Even if I push forward a little bit, I'm thinking about, you mentioned that there were other superstars that got involved, like Carlos Santana, Bonnie Raitt. How did that part come into play to help you get the message out? Did they find you, or did you find them? How'd that work out?
So that's a great question. It's been pretty organic. I'll be honest. In the beginning, I reached out to Bonnie Raitt, Carlos, and John Lee Hooker because I just knew they lived locally. And I assumed when I sent them packages, I would likely never hear back. But hey, I figured I could spend a couple bucks on postage. What the heck? To my delight, they all responded. But then from there, they introduced us to other people that were in their own community. And it became sort of a self-perpetuating thing. So now over the years, we've had the great pleasure of working with people like Smokey Robinson and Joan Jett and Billy Joe Armstrong and Stephen Van Zandt and Lady Gaga and Bruce Springsteen and Kenny Loggins and Sam Moore of Sam and Dave, and the list goes on and on. And we're a grassroots organization. I mean, we were started by a first grade school teacher. There was nothing fancy about it. And there still really isn't. And grassroots is a powerful thing because, when you think about the roots of grass, they start to really spread everywhere. And so our artist network has grown very organically. I was speaking just yesterday with one of our board members, a gentleman by the name of Brian Hardgrove, who is the musical director and bass player on hiatus from Public Enemy. And he was talking about, and we have many artist friends in common, some of whom he's introduced us to. So, and by the way, that same growth within our artist community is exactly what happens in the teacher community. Because one teacher tells another teacher, hey, you got to check out Little Kids Rock. Well, what's Little Kids Rock? Well, let me tell you what Little Kids Rock is. I was trying to find different ways to engage with certain kids. I didn't feel like I was reaching them, but they came in and they gave me training, and they showed me that I could teach these instruments that perhaps I wasn't familiar with yet, these genres that I wasn't familiar with yet. I could keep doing what I was doing, but suddenly I could reach so many more kids, and they gave me instrument. Really? How do I get in touch? Well, go to littlekidsrock.org. And so our teacher network expanded that way. And of course, our funder network has expanded that way over time because people say, hey, you know what? I live in, Atlanta, and look what I've done for the schools here. And then people in Savannah, are interested suddenly. And that's really been how we've run. Now, it's not to say that we don't have strategy. We do. And I can tell you a little bit more about what our kind of strategic vision is for how we hope to bring whatever we feel we have to offer to really truly the entire country. Because although we've served over 1 million children, we have over 500,000 children currently involved. There are like 75 million school-aged children in the United States today. So that's a big number.
That's a big number. Yeah,
very big. So anyway, so
knowing that then. Knowing the program is so nationally recognized now, do you still find it hard getting schools to say, hey, we want to add this on? Like, are they resistant to the importance of music education, or are they still like, I'm not sure?
Well, of course, that there's not a one size fits all answer to that question. I would say the vast majority of schools are really open to having resources that they don't have brought to bear. What's a little different about Little Kids Rock from many other programs that bring services to youth, let's say, is that I like to joke, but I'm only half joking, that it's an inside job, right? We're not the service providers. It's the school teachers. So the schools actually adopt the program and write it into their own curriculum. So a district has to really prioritize that. So, and once they've done, so it's not like a bolt on, that's something from outside, like we come in and we teach and do that. It's like, no. We're leveraging your human resources, your teachers, to bring new services to more children. And so, what's different about that is it becomes their priority not only ours. And so, again, it's a question of them looking at their peers and saying, oh, okay, like I'll give so. But you're right. Over the years, there's been some resistance. That seems to be going away. Like, for example, one place that we serve is the Denver public school system. And they had heard about us. We had a lot of meetings. They had a lot of questions. So wait, is this going to, what will this do to our jazz program? No, it's fine. It's not going to harm it. It's only going to expand it. Well, who can we talk to as a reference? We'll talk to the New York Department of Ed, or talk to the Los Angeles Unified School District, or talk to, the folks in DC, or whatever. And so, over the years, our approach has become more of a known quantity. And right now, our biggest challenge really is resource constraint. How do we, there's more demand from school districts across the country than we can meet. And that's only growing now in COVID times, because the way music was being taught in March just changed pretty dramatically by the end of that month. Right. So try, for those of your listeners who are music makers or have been in a music classroom, try to get your mind around this. There's no more making music at the same time with other human beings for the majority of public school children and teachers. So if you're used to walking into music class and having the teacher say, okay, everyone, we're going to start playing now, that can't happen anymore because of the nature of the internet. I could illustrate this very easily for your guests. Now, you're a musician and I'm a musician. If I start clapping like this and I ask you to clap with me, you will not be able to, because of the latency. So we can't even keep a beat together. There's no way you're going to be able to play your piano and I can grab my guitar and we can play. So, and then you multiply that by 30 or 40 kids in a classroom, that's cacophony.
That's insane.
You can't put... Yeah, and you can't play wind instruments in schools if you're in school because the concern about the virus. And you can't sing because of concern about the virus. And there's some local variation with this. But what I'm trying to say is it's a new day. It's a new ball game for music teachers. And again, we have to reinvent what we're doing. So Little Kids Rock is creating curriculum for teachers that'll help them in this environment. Distance learning, what are things? So maybe you can't have all your kids record at the same time, but could they do online multi-track recording where they each record their part at a different time? Of course they can, and we can show you how to do that. Could they program their own beats using readily available online websites? Of course they can. We can train you how to do that. Can they be involved in composition and other activities and that don't need to be done synchronously with other students or even with the teacher in the room? Of course they can, and we can show you how to do that. What I think is what I'm excited about, even though, look, there's not that much exciting in many ways about what's going on right now. Just to keep it real for a moment, the majority of the children that we serve are free and reduced lunch. Many of them are having difficulty. Many of them get their 2 meals a day from school, breakfast and lunch. And that's been somewhat disrupted. I mean, things are really challenging, and anybody with a heart has to feel for students, teachers, not to mention their families, people cramped together. But every cloud, I believe, has a silver lining. And some of the silver linings here are, children can now build digital skills while they're learning music that will endure and help them for a lifetime. Children can now learn collaborative skills in a different way that will endure and support and help them for a lifetime. Children can now learn, and educators too, to be the creative problem solvers that the world needs right now, because the music's not going to stop. Music stops if humanity stops. So long as there's people, there will always be music, right?
Sure.
It's like that movie, Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum says, after the dinosaurs reproduce when they're not supposed to, he's like, life will find a way. You know, when I heard that, people always ask me, are you worried that music's going to disappear if we? And it's like, no. Music will. People could disappear, and then music will disappear. But as long as there's people that won't, what we're witnessing right now is an entire industry crossing the digital Rubicon and learning together what this can mean for our learning in the future. So what I like to tell people is, for music education and for education in general, this is not a fire drill. The building is actually on fire, and we all had to leave it. Now, how far will it be altered by the flames? That nobody knows. But one thing is certain: school will never be the same again, because it's going to have to be rebuilt. And music education will never be the same again. And it's our job to make sure that whatever gains can be made in this environment become permanent. So I'll give you a couple of examples. People as mature as yourself and me will remember a time where if we wanted to go to a new place on planet Earth that we'd never been before, we'd go to a store, we'd buy a folded up piece of paper, we'd uncrumple it, it would be a map. And then we would mark on it where we were and where we were trying to get to and pick the roads that made the most sense. And then some of us started using a GPS. And then realized that we could just use our phone. And we started saying, like, wow, I would love to have all that time that I used to use in my life to pursue other more meaningful things. And so it's hard to go back. So when a child learns that they can create a song in the comfort of their own home that has drums and bass and keyboards, even though they don't have access to those instruments, they'll never go back, and they'll have something special that will carry forward even after the storm has passed. So that's what I think Little Kids Rock that's certainly what our team is working on right now, is a metamorphosis for music education. Truly a metamorphosis.
Well, that is a big mouthful, but a ton of vision encompassed in that small space. And I can only imagine that as you started to build this out and see where this was going and wanting to get instruments to the children's hands and to the schools, that you had to find companies to get involved with, because you couldn't buy all this by yourself. I can't imagine. So how did, finding companies like Harman and Sweetwater, and even our company, IK Multimedia, which is also a donator of some things as well. How did you find those? How did that part come into play? Was that part of the vision that you would seek out companies to assist, or did they just come to you?
Well, it was a natural byproduct, and it's a great question, Derek. And by the way, thank you so much for the support that your company has given us. And it's been very salient, right? I mean, right now, our kids are stuck at home, many of them, the vast majority, or at least partially. And what better could they use to make music in their homes right now? Earphones, microphones, things that allow, especially for the benefit of their families, who sometimes they're in very close quarters. So thank you for that. But I would say, so yes. But our business model is, of course, we take donated product, but mostly we buy it, and we tend to buy it in a large volume. So you can't generally walk into a music store and just say, I would like 5,000 3/4 size guitars and 2,000 full-size guitars. It's just like, so we quickly realized that as we grew, and Little Kids Rock has grown tremendously over the years. Our first year, our annual operating budget was about $72,000 for everything. Prior to this, situation we're in, we were operating with more like $6 million each year. So, almost 100x growth. So, when you're buying instruments at that volume, it becomes strategically important to work with the companies that are producing those products. And so we've worked with many great companies over the years and continue to, including your own, of course. Right now, things are a little bit in flux because, like buying instruments and shipping them to schools when kids aren't in school, our business model is like so many others, is temporarily disrupted. But that's really how we began to work with musical products companies, was by being a very large musical product customer. And the reason that we generally buy, although we do accept donations quite gratefully, is that that's what scales, right? You know, like if a company one year feels they can give you lots of instruments, but the next year they can't, you know, you don't want to be sitting there scratching your head and saying, well, wait, but how are we going to bring instruments to the kids this year? So by buying in volume, of course, we get wonderful pricing from these different companies. And, you know, and then, of course, a company like Sweetwater has been great for us because we can sort of get so many products shipped to our schools from one central location, and not have to worry about any of that ourselves, you know, storing the instruments, shipping the instruments. And so and also, you know, NAMM, the National Association for Music Merchants, is the trade show or the trade group for the entire musical products industry. And they've been supporters for years as well. And so that's another way we've met so many of those companies.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think, you know, for us that are leading these companies and that understand the plight of music programs out there, we need to be initiating contact. And I'm gonna charge some of the companies that I know to make some phone calls as well, because I feel like if we talked about when I first started the call, if you think things are bad and you do nothing, then nothing changes. So you have to be willing to step out and make a change. And when you decided as an elementary school teacher that, hey, this music program, if they aren't here anymore, I got to get this program to the kids somehow, some way. You took it upon yourself to start it all on your own, giving away free classes after school on your own time. That's being dedicated to the cause. So I just want to at least acknowledge that, you know, that was your heart in the beginning, and that people that may be looking around saying maybe my program at school isn't that good, or my child doesn't have any access to things like that. There's always a way. So hopefully Little Kids Rock can be maybe a new resource for that. Or if your school out there doesn't really have, or has a program, but maybe not as deep as you'd like it to see, or maybe they're having problems with technology, let's talk to Dave. Dave may have an answer for you, or one of the people for Dave's company may be an answer for you, right, Dave?
Absolutely, please. We're always excited to talk to what I like to call co-conspirators to create positive mischief for children in schools. Thanks for acknowledging that. But I have to say, Derek, it's like, we all who have these gifts, I think have a duty to pass them on. Mm-hmm. It was passed on to us. You didn't invent piano. You didn't invent music. I didn't invent any of this. I was given it. I was given that gift by those who came before me, and I feel a duty to pass it on to the next generation. And I mean, there are a lot of problems with the world right now. Some of your viewers may have noticed. I would just hazard a very simple formula for fixing it, is that when the adults of the world lean into their responsibility for providing the children of the world that which they should be provided with, many of these problems, I believe, would go away. Are we modeling the way we speak with each other that we want our children to adopt? Are we modeling our use of resources that we want our children to adopt? Are we modeling these things? I mean, when you really, and that's one of the things that's hard for, I think, any parent or anyone who loves children, to see the world through a child's eyes right now. We can do so much more as grownups. We've got to step up, because they're looking at us, and they're going to take the reins tomorrow. So for me, that's the greatest message and the greatest gift of music education, is that the future of the world really lies in our children's hands and their creativity. And it's that asset that's going to solve whatever problem you feel humanity is facing. It's going to be solved by some kid sitting somewhere right now, or not. And that's up to us, whether we invest in our kids or we don't. Music education is a part of it, but I hope that as a country and as a world, we can come together and do right by our children. And I think everything else starts to fall into place after that. So I'm optimistic, when I'm honest.
I love it. I love that your vision is forward, and that you're thinking this is going to evolve. So that brings us to one more question, which is, you've done great things so far with Little Kids Rock. You've expanded to 43 states. You've served 1 million children. And what's the next chapter of Little Kids Rock look like for you? What is that? What do you see in your mind?
I see three main things. One is we're starting programming to reach children directly, children, with or without a teacher. And we're doing it because, sadly, millions of kids have no music programs in their schools. So why wait? Why? I mean, sure, they should have music programs in their schools, but why not try to reach children directly? Obviously, in a way that is safe and considered and legal. You can't just write to children, but
Sure.
there are many websites that have figured out, PBS Kids and etc. How do we bring educational materials, games, things that could be helpful to a child? So that's one thing that I see in the future. The second thing that I see in the future is, and this is my bid to ultimately make what we do obsolete. We have certain practices that I think would be beneficial to schools everywhere, but we'll never be able to serve 75 million kids directly. So we've started working at the college level. So we now train college professors, music professors, how to take our approach when they're training the next generation of music teachers. So when that music teacher,
smart.
Yeah, so when they hit that classroom 10 years from now, 5 years from now, next year, they're ready. Sure, they'll teach classical or jazz or whatever, but they will be just as adept and just as ready to teach rap or rock or whatever genre comes next that inspires the next generation. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, again, it's like one of these silver linings of the current moment. Who's a teacher, who's a parent, who's a student gets a lot mushier. A lot of parents are having to help their kids navigate this new weird world, right?
Yeah.
A lot of parents are suddenly seeing a lot more about what's going on in their kids' education because, by the way, they're in class right there, right next to
them.
Yeah. So I see an opportunity for the work we do to be relevant outside of schools, with boys and girls clubs, with, denominational groups, with elders, like old folks, etc. Again, I think if I were to put my finger on what has made this program successful more than anything is we have an approach to teaching that gets people of any age playing the music they love quickly, easily, socially, and who doesn't want that, right? Whether you're listening to the music of the 1930s or 20s or the 2020s,
You're dating us. Don't date us. Come on.
So that's my vision for the future, and also it is to candidly to go out of business, not for a bad reason, not for the fact that we didn't work hard or we didn't have a good product or a good plan, but rather that look, if I give you my phone, you have this phone and I don't anymore. But if I give you an idea and you find it valuable, we can both keep it, right? Ideas can scale exponentially.
I love that.
So that's what we want to do. We want to put the ideas that our teachers and students have proven to us over the years are so useful and valuable. We want to make them part of the collective property of our nation and our nation's children and teachers and everybody else. And then, we won't be necessary again. Maybe in another 20 years, that will be the case. I hope so. And that's what we're working on.
Well, what a wonderful story and what you've done and what your company has done over the last 20 years, I suppose now. So it's amazing to see what, like you said, one idea started and now this idea has been transferred to thousands of people across the country who are carrying on your vision because they see this idea can be duplicated again. So you've done just that, my friend. You've changed the landscape of music education forever. So be proud and know that we're supporting you 100%. A lot of us parents out there are saying, hey, we're so glad you're doing this, and that we realize the importance of music education and what it brings to the student. Like we said before we first started talking, I feel like music education, when it's not there, we're missing a large component of how a child understands things, because rhythm and sound is a definite part of how we understand, how we receive information. And when they can't play along with someone or pick up a guitar or a piano or a flute or whatever that instrument is, they're connecting with an instrument, they're connecting with music, which is a whole other part of us that we miss when we don't have that. So you bringing that to school, making sure that's relevant, making sure that's important, is one of the most amazing things you could have ever done. So we sure do appreciate you, man.
Well, I feel more than proud. I feel grateful. I feel grateful for all the people, because, I'm just a convener of other people's good wishes for kids. I'm a cheerleader, and a happy one, because what a great job bringing resources.
Just don't wear the skirt, man. No skirts for you. You can do the pom-poms though. No skirts.
So the other thing I was going to say is that, if your listeners are interested in learning more, getting resources for themselves, for their own families, their own children, people that they know and love and care about, I would definitely encourage them to visit littlekidsrock.org. There's lessons there. There's other resources. And there's plenty of room in our community for more people to make more music happen for more kids more quickly. So I hope that I'll have an opportunity to speak with them, any of your interested viewers, and of course, this is just such a wonderful opportunity. I'm so grateful to you for it.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for stopping by and just sharing your time and your story. It means so much. And we appreciate what you've done. And like I said, we're going to be cheering you on as well. Part of myself and my IK Multimedia Company are definitely invested in what you do. So again, those of you that are watching, if you want to hear more information, please go to littlekidsrock.org. There's so much information there that you can find out how to maybe bring it to your school, or bring it to your student, or bring it to yourself. You never know. You might want to check it out on your own. And so as we start to close this up, I want to remind us, this was a segment about school education and having music being still there, not being taken away from us, not being taken away from our children. And that sometimes there's a way to figure that out, and that we just need to dig a little deeper. It's a conversation to have with someone in your own family. Maybe you've got an aunt or an uncle or someone that has a child that maybe they're not getting music programs there. This is a great conversation to have, to say, hey, let's dig around. There's some other options out there to make sure that our schools keep music education first and foremost. So thank you so much for taking the time, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the segment. Look forward to seeing you again next time at the Beautiful Now podcast. Beautiful Now.